Good evening, everybody. Folks are steadily coming in, so I'm going to give it about 2 more minutes and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. Hey, we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being prompt and on time. I'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. It's 6:33. Today is gonna be a little different than our normal all-call meetings, as we have some friends from National here with us tonight to go over some election protection information and other things as we, at least here in Arizona, are winding down in our election process. I know some of you are experiencing ballot issues, so hopefully we'll be able to cover some of those today as well. But I would like to first introduce, actually, before we start that, let me share with all of you where we are with the Tyrone McAlpin case. I know that we've been trying to keep most of you, all of you, if you're getting our newsletter, up to date on what's been happening with his case. Last week, County Attorney Rachel Mitchell dropped all of his charges, and his lawyers are pushing to make sure that it was dropped with prejudice, meaning that they cannot be refiled. Their Phoenix PD, as well as the police union, excuse me, are a little upset that those charges have been dropped, even though Tyrone was the actual victim. But they don't like to admit when they're wrong or take accountability. So we're trying to ensure that it's dropped with prejudice. And even if they do get refiled, Vice President Miller and myself met with the county attorney last week, and she confirmed and gave her word that even if those charges come back to her office, she will not be prosecuting him. As far as the two police officers go, I know that they were put on administrative leave, I think earlier this week. And if you remember, this case actually happened in August. So there's 2 months of time frame that they've still been on the streets harassing folks and not taking accountability. And what was shared with us during that meeting with the county attorney was that in order for the police officers to be held accountable, a couple of things have to happen. First, there has to be an actual investigation within the police department, which sounds like those things are taking place right now. Two, yes, we all know that there were policy active policy items that were not followed in that arrest and assault on Tyron. And so anything policy related, use of force, not asking for his ID, going through his phone without a warrant, those are going to be handled inside the police department. But it's the criminal charges, like if they're going to be held accountable for actually assaulting him, violating his civil rights, things like that, that will make it to not only the county attorney's office, but we'll put them on the Brady's list. His lawyers will be filing a federal case for his civil rights violations, and I believe that they will be seeking damages. We were able to work with a subset of the DOJ to get him new hearing aids. Even though he's on Social Security, he couldn't afford $7,000 for hearing aids. And so there's an organization that was willing to sponsor those hearing aids for him. And Vice President Miller was able to get he and his wife free therapy, excuse me. And that was something that he did ask for. They have a 6-month-old son, and so his fear that day was that he just had a baby and now his baby's gonna grow up without a father. And so we're so thankful that, you know, we have some therapists step up and willing to support that family for free. And then the last thing I really wanted to share with all of you, because we were so moved when we were able to talk with him, was that we asked what did he want the community to know? What did he want what he wanted law enforcement to know? And ultimately what he shared was that he still has love for them. All he wants is for people to share love and to be safe. And so what a beautiful soul, what a beautiful heart he has. Because speaking for myself, if I had been assaulted the way that he was, especially unjustly, I don't know that I could hold love in my heart for those people. So he has been cleared to make a statement publicly now, and his attorneys will be working with him and prepping with him and an interpreter to do that hopefully next week. National shared that they would be willing to do some more press on it, and hopefully they'll be able to provide a Black male interpreter for him. We met with President Johnson and some other folks either Monday or late last week, Friday. So did they say they were going to be doing trainings for disabilities? No, we have not covered that yet. And that is something else that we're asking the community to request from Phoenix PD, as well as the city of Phoenix, Mayor Gallego, that their training needs to be updated. Their academy needs to be updated. And I mentioned earlier that we had a meeting with a subset of the DOJ, and they are like the community response portion of the DOJ. And so what they do is put trainings together, put nonviolent protests together, connect community agencies together. And so we're going to continue to work with them and see if we can get some of that training implemented into their academy. Of course, as we continue to go along with this case, we'll make sure that we'll let all of you know. And for those of you that are on Twitter, there was a high-profile person within the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office who posted post Rachel Mitchell's dismissal of charges, who basically said, well, maybe you shouldn't rob people and those charges will be refiled. And so we saw that, Dave Biscobine saw that, and immediately we took to action and called for his termination, not a resignation, but a termination. And so at this point in time, that man is also on leave. So I want to thank all of you who sent emails and letters to Congressman Gallego, to Rachel Mitchell, to Mayor Gallego, their city council members. It's because of you that we were able to get charges dropped for a young man who's still alive and here with us today. So thank you. Um, Moving into tonight's festivities, I would love to introduce this young man who I now call Unc, but I don't know enough about you to do introductions. So, Anthony, would you love to introduce yourself to all of us, please?
Hi, my name is Anthony Ashton. I am a Senior Associate General Counsel for the National NAACP. I have been with the organization. I joined 4 years ago, right before the 2020 election. Um, Before that, I spent many years in private practice. I worked for what is affectionately referred to as a mega firm, where I was a partner at a law firm that had 3,000 partners across the globe. But I did civil rights work on a pro bono basis and did work for the NAACP on a pro bono basis there. Uh, I am working with the election protection efforts for the NAACP during this year. I will hopefully be able to do a presentation for you. As some of you may see, I am both on my cell phone for my camera uh, as well as on my computer, because for some reason, right when I started this, the the computer was unable to recognize that I have a camera on my Zoom could not recognize that I had a camera on my computer. Uh, if I can, if for the computer one, that's the one with just a still image of me, I could be allowed to share my screen. I'd like to do a presentation, and I promise to move as quickly through this as possible because, I recognize that everyone on this call is a volunteer. You're all doing this out of your own time. I will say that I did recognize one name of one non-volunteer, and that is Victor Good, who is also a member of the Office of General Counsel, who has joined us here this evening. Victor is also part of our election protection program uh, through in 2024. So let me see if I am allowed to share my screen.
You should be. I gave you permission.
Okay. And, all right. So you keep hearing this over and over again that this is the most important election of our lives, or one of the most important elections of our lives. And that is quite true. It is sometimes we find it interesting that younger people, in some cases, don't get that because, well, for them, they voted once or twice. And so they've been told that for every election. Those of us who have been around for a little bit longer have seen that there are some elections where the truth, let's be honest, the truth is that there have been elections in the past where the candidates were pretty much the same, and even if they weren't that much alike, you weren't really afraid of one as opposed to another. Um, that being said, we have to remember that the NAACP is a nonpartisan organization, meaning that we do not endorse any candidate. But the expression for us is that we are nonpartisan, but political as hell. So, yes, we do endorse ideas. We do stand behind principles. We will ultimately say we won't tell you for whom you should vote, but we will tell you what the truth is, and we will tell you what the issues are, and we will tell you there is a right, there is a wrong, and in many instances, there is no gray area. And we will let you make the decision on your own. So let's take start going through this. We're in 2024 for election protection. All right, so things that are our civic engagement is doing a lot of work on this, and that's the group that has been trying to get people right now we're in the midst of the GOTV efforts, which is get out the votes. We're going to talk about these things tonight. All right, so as part of this, our election protection program, we are working with the units, with the members. The goal is to get people out and vote. That is plainly it. Now in Arizona does not have same-day registration, and your deadline for registration was October 7th. We're at the 24th. So it's not about getting people registered at this point. It's about getting those people who are registered to vote. You do have early voting. I'm going to say this now, and I will say it later on. If you have already voted, if you are one of those people who got out early, you started voting, or the moment that you vote early, your job is not over. Your job is not over until not only you vote, but you convince people around you to vote. That includes, for some of you, those grown children who are sleeping in your house. Until they are out and voting, your job is not over. For some of you, it may be your parents or your grandparents who need assistance in voting. Until they're out, your job is not over. For some, it may be people in the community, people or just folks around you who you know, whether it be socially or be from work, who are registered to vote, but for some reason just aren't motivated enough to do it. It is your job, it is your charge to get those people to vote, including convincing them, explaining to them why it's important to vote. And in some cases, if we're talking about folks who might have some difficulty getting to the polls, figuring out a way to help them out to get to the polls. The goal we want to stress for everyone here is that we want you to just vote when voters are. By the way, I'm not going to read through these slides because my feeling is I used to be a teacher before becoming a lawyer. I don't read to adults. It's on the screen. You can read it. I will make comments, but I will not be reading the things word for word. All right, but we do have lawyers and other advocates working to prevent voter suppression, which is alive and well. And our motto this year is "We fight, you vote." So you know, the National NAACP, the legal department, civic engagement, we are working very hard. I will talk about it later on, some of the fights that we're engaged in now to make sure that you vote. All right. So at this point, everyone should check their registration. At the bottom of this is the Arizona Secretary of State website, which if you'll go on, it's azsoc.gov/elections. If you don't want to remember that, you can literally just type in Arizona Secretary of State elections into Google. It will take you to their page. All right. The thing we want you to remember is to verify that you're registered. If you've got a sample ballot, review it. Make sure that you know what your polling location is. That too can be found on your Secretary of State website. Choose a method of voting, whether it be early voting, vote by mail, or you want to wait till Election Day. I look at voting the same way that I look at shopping gift shopping on December 24th at 4:30 p.m. Yeah, you can do it then, but you are waiting to the last minute. Election Day. That is, we call it Election Day, but November 5th is not Election Day. That is the last day to vote. That's how you should consider it. It's not Election Day. It's the last date that you can vote. And so you've got all the time leading up to that to get it done. I would highly recommend, and it is our position, that you get your vote in early, that you make a plan. And yes, if there are some people who want to vote in the thick of things on Election Day, if that's that's what motivates you, fine. But by the same token, make sure that you do it. And by the way, we also think about anything can happen on election day. We have crazy weather. Cars break down, people get sick, people have accidents. Anything can happen on election day. So if you can, work it out ahead of time. All right. Know what type of ID that you need. That also can be found on your Secretary of State website. I will tell you that you've got in Arizona, you have an entire list of different things that you can bring that have your photo on them. And then there's a list of things that you can bring if they don't have your photo on them. And then the final thing is that you can mix and match from the two different categories. It is very long. Go to your website, take a look at it, but know what you need to bring before you get there. Always cast a vote. If you're at your polling place and you're not, they're telling you for whatever reason that your name doesn't appear, do not leave until your vote is cast. And that means that even if you have to cast a provisional ballot, which is a last resort, you take that last resort and you let others know that they take that last resort. Do not go home saying, I wanted to vote and they wouldn't let me. You do not leave that room until you have cast a provisional ballot. And that's something that comes from, that we've dealt with for the last, well, at this point, I think we're going back 24 years that we've had this law in place. All right, fix or cure the ballot. That's if there's something wrong with your ballot, meaning that you received notice that for some reason there was a problem with it. If you did a mail-in ballot and you forgot to sign someplace or you forgot to date someplace, they will sometimes contact you and tell you that you have to cure your ballot, fix your ballot. If you are one of those people, or if you know one of those people, make sure that you take that opportunity to actually do that. Because if you don't cure your ballot after they've sent you notice saying there's a problem with it, they will not count your ballot. It is the same as if you didn't vote at all. If you don't take that extra step, that is only there because you did not do something you were required to do. If there are issues while voting, then I'm going to tell you two things you can do. Three things, actually. You can text polls. That's the word POLLS to 20707. You can text POLLS to 20707. Or you can call 1-866-OUR, OUR, VOTE, VOTE. Now, there's another QR code, which I will show you later, which takes you to a system that is run by the NAACP. That is another way to report problems on election day or at the polls. We will get to that later, and I'm going to ask you to all have your smartphones at that point. I'm also going to ask your president before election day to either email or preferably or possibly text all of you that information. All right. Vote.org, we've worked with them as far as registration and verification. As I said, at this point, it's too late to register, but it is not too late to verify that you are registered to check your registration status. Key things to remember we've talked about this, why you want to early vote, why you want to mail-in vote. We've dealt with this, so I'm going to skip to the next one. This is, again, talking about reporting problems at the polls. We gave you the 866-OUR-VOTE. I've given you that number already. I've told you how to text. And here is from your Secretary of State website. It gives you your deadlines. So we know that October 7th was the last date to register for the November 5th election. Early voting began October 9th. The deadline for accepting requests for a ballot by mail. It is not too late. You have until tomorrow to request a ballot by mail. The deadline for to vote in person, early voting, is November 1st. The general election is on November 5th. November 5th is the last date, period. I say that because, and I talk about this early voting because we've already seen some scams, which we'll talk about disinformation later. But the important thing to remember is that there are only 3 ways to vote in your state. You can vote by mail-in. You can vote in person, early voting, or you can vote on election day. That's it. No matter what else people may throw at you, no matter what type of disinformation, whatever type of scams there may be, the scams are generally targeted at younger voters who don't have experience and older voters because they're taking advantage of older voters. And so I'll give you a couple of examples of scams. And I'm going to keep saying scam over and over again so that when you leave, you don't say, I think I heard him say you can vote that way. We've seen scams where they're now contacting people and telling them you can vote by phone. No, you can't. You may see something telling you can vote by text. This ain't American Idol. That's not how it works. No, you cannot vote by text, no matter what someone tells you, no matter how official it looks close to election day. It's a scam. There's one place I found out about earlier this week where someone showed up was going door to door saying, "Are you registered to vote?" Well, you can vote right now using this machine that I brought with me. That's a scam. Okay, things that are scams. Being able to buy the Brooklyn Bridge. A Nigerian prince having money that you can get if you just give him your bank account number. And anything else that is not that you can vote on election day in person, you can vote in person, early voting during the times that are set forth at an early voting location, or you can vote by mail. Anything else is a scam. And that includes, and this happened some years ago in Baltimore, where they put up signs in Black neighborhoods saying to cut down on lines and to make things easier and less congested on election day. What we're going to do is we've developed a system so all Republicans will vote on Tuesday and all Democrats will vote on Wednesday. Yes, they actually did that. Obviously, for all of us sophisticated folks, we know, well, that doesn't sound right because we know that the last day to vote is going to be Tuesday. So when this stuff comes up, when this disinformation comes out, the important thing is don't spread it. Don't say, well, that could be true. It's not. I've already given you the only ways that you can vote, and that's it. All right, voter do's and don'ts regarding voter intimidations. We're going to talk about what voter intimidation is. By the way, that's another reason that that mail-in ballots are pretty good as far as avoiding voter intimidation, because you can't intimidate me. I already voted. By the way, I'll also let you know I voted on Saturday. I'm not worried about anybody intimidating me at the polling place because I'm not going to be at the polls on election day. Well, I'll be at some polls, but those polls will be in Philadelphia working with our headquarters there. All right. So voter intimidation anywhere is illegal. It violates both federal and state law. All right. Possible examples of possible voter intimidation: verbally or physically threatening voters, carrying weapons inside or near a polling place, questioning voters about their eligibility. By the way, here's the thing: we tend to be very polite people in this country. So, well, they came up to me and they asked me questions, and so I felt like I had to answer them. No, you don't. You don't have to answer questions from some stranger who comes up to you. You're an adult. You're a grown up. They're a nobody. There's some clown who showed up at your polling place and decided to ask you questions. You don't even have to speak to them. Confronting voters while wearing military style clothing. By the way, the folks who are wearing camouflage in an urban area, does that even make sense? Does camouflage, do you think that you're going to blend in with a building? These are soldier costumes. And I guess it's not that far after Halloween when they're showing up, and maybe it's leftover and they were dressed as G.I. Joe or something else. But no, they're not soldiers. They're not in the military. They're not in anything official. They're not anything official. You do not have to respond to these people. If you see these people, you are free to report them. All right, or if law enforcement is loitering around voters, that's if they're in uniform. If someone happens to be a police officer and they're around the polling place, they're allowed to be around the polling place, but they're not supposed to be. Matter of fact, you're not even supposed to, in many places, vote in uniform. They'll tell you, no, you obviously law enforcement have the right to vote, but you're not supposed to show up in uniform. That's an old Southern intimidation trick. The sheriff shows up like, I'll arrest you if you show up and vote. So those are forms of it. So what do you do if you see this? One, first of all, do not engage with these people. It is not your job to have a fight with these folks out there or to argue them down or yell at them. Get someplace, first, also make sure that you vote. Get someplace safe if needed. Call law enforcement. Document, including the polling place, the date, the time, a description of what happened. And if you can get a description of who the person is, I'm going to give you, and here's a description of people because sometimes folks don't quite gather this. You want to describe their race, their approximate height, their hair color, whether they have hair, what they're wearing, top and bottom, black shirt, blue jeans, blue shirt, khaki pants, full military garb, because that way you have to give authorities something that they can go with. If it's, oh, I don't know, it was just a big guy. Okay, I don't know. How tall are you? I don't know what big means to you. All right. So try to estimate, if you can, try to estimate their age. Okay. And that can be anything. Early 30s, mid 40s, good enough. All right. Report it to the National NAACP and call 866 Our Vote. And I'll show you, as I said, we're going to get to a reporting, something to report to NAACP. All right. But no, you do not, you don't want to confront these people. If you can, if you've got remember, you can't use your cell phone inside of most polling places. All right. You can't record in most polling places. And that is for the protection of voters because no one should be recording them and you don't want anyone recording you. We are going to have command centers and we want to make sure that you know what those are. Reporting issues to NAACP. Oh, by the way, that's another thing. And I saw someone said that they're going to be a partisan observer. You also want to report if the person who is doing something wrong is a poll worker. Poll workers are not there to stop people from voting. They're not there to harass people. They're there to help people vote. And I will also say this: the vast majority of poll workers over the years have done just that. They tend to be older folks who are perhaps retirees, and this is something for them to do. In many cases, they are there just for the purpose of helping people. And unfortunately, after the last presidential election, a number of them quit because of being harassed, because of false claims of vote rigging or some other nonsense. But if there's still a chance for you to be a poll worker, be a poll worker. They need those folks. And also by doing it, you can help with democracy. I don't know how it is in your places. I know that we, in Baltimore City, they advertised last week that they still needed 700 poll workers there. So if they need poll workers in your area, it's something good to do. And you also get paid I mean, you're not going to get paid a huge amount, but you'll get, you'll get a few ducats to put in your pocket. All right. Your lead attorney for Arizona is me. The NAACP is going to be operating command centers, and that information will be shared with your state conference president. Throughout the day, we're going to be doing check-ins to make sure that everything is going all right. If there are problems, we want those reported to us, and we will work with your state conference and with your branches to try to remedy any problems that there might be. And it looks like isn't that great? Because I had to use my cell phone. It looks like my cell phone is about to die. I can't do anything about that. But we're going to keep moving on. So if you lose me on the cell phone, that's the image. I'm going to keep talking and keep moving forward with the presentation. But luckily, there's not that much more of it. All right, everyone, if you can take out your cell phone right now, your smartphone, and if you can go hover over this image that is on your screen, it should take you to a form. I don't really want you to complete the form right now, but it will take you to a form. This form is for the NAACP to report problems. As I said, I'm going to ask your president on the close to the day of, matter of fact, before then, whatever she would actually like, to text out this image to you, or to put this on your Facebook page or your website or your Instagram, so that you will have this and you can save this. This image will take you to our own NAACP proprietary data incident or NAACP voter incident report form on election day. If you're actually having, or at early voting, if you're actually having an actual problem, you can report it using this, and we will know what's going on and we can work to address the problem. All right. So everyone knows how a QR code works. If you don't know how this works, the great thing is that you can hover over this on your screen right now, and it will take you to it. If you have it on your page, your web page or something where it's on your smartphone, you can simply push down on it, depress on it, and then follow the instructions, and it will still take you there. So you don't have to have your camera working at the time. And because I have such a wonderful wife, she heard me and has brought me a charging cable so that I can plug my phone in so that it will not die during the course of this. I don't know if this is from the floor, then no, this is track. And she actually bought me a new cord. And so I will tell you, if you have the chance to marry someone who you met when you were 16 years old and stay married to them forever, please do that. And if she happens to be a Delta, even better. All right. Let's see if this plugs in and it works.
Anthony,
all right.
there he is. Thank you for the comment.
All right, and I thank my wife who's over there. All right, so I'm plugged in, and I'll keep moving on with this. All right, so understanding misinformation and disinformation. By the way, there's a difference between the two. Let me make misinformation is just incorrect information. Disinformation is intentionally incorrect information. It's done to get people to either not vote, or it's done to prevent them from voting. So it's either done to suppress their vote or to keep them from voting at all. All right. There's been a lot of disinformation, and there will continue to be a lot of disinformation. We went over the ways in which you can vote. That's it. Those are the only ways, no matter what you hear from now until after the election is over. Those are the only ways. Some misinformation and disinformation include there have been a lot of lawsuits that have been filed. Well, there's been a lot of talk about what they're referring to as non-citizens voting. Interestingly, or I guess it would be of interest because it's not an adverb. That's not a thing. We can barely get US citizens to vote. What are the odds that non-citizens have come to this country, are willing to risk going to jail so that they can cast a single ballot for their candidate of their preference? It's just not a thing. Here's what we've also learned, and what I learned from a meeting that I had with a number of other civil rights organizations. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who believe this myth. And so we have to share with them the fact that there are no statistics showing that evidence of this. It's the same as all the nonsense that happened in 2020 in those post-election lawsuits. You're in Arizona. You know that there is a strong there's a lot of conspiracy theorists, which result in you guys spending millions of dollars for the cyber ninjas, people who didn't know what they were doing, to start, were they looking with like blue lights or black lights trying to find bamboo in ballots to prove that they were from China? As stupid as that sounds, and as stupid as that was, it happened. And did it prove what the conspiracists say it was going to prove? Of course not, because the conspiracies were stupid, but they were out there and they were widespread, and we can expect more of that. It says that, and I saw someone that he flew out of your state a few hours ago. All right, we talked about the difference between these two things. So here's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we do not pass on misinformation, and that we make the NAACP a place that if folks have a question, they can come to us and we can tell them the truth. I know that if it showed up on Facebook, well, this wouldn't tell me something. Well, this was passed on to me. This was posted by somebody I know. That doesn't mean it's right. I'll give you an idea of misinformation and disinformation. And I know someone who told me years ago when we were talking about and this is before the 2020 election. And this is everyone there? And I don't know if you are, and I can't see your faces anyway because of the way that the Zoom is set up. Are you familiar with the idea of conspiracy brother? That's the brother who knows that there's a conspiracy behind everything. There's always some deep, dark secret. And he or she have figured it out. And they're going to tell you about it. And they're going to act accordingly. And so, for example, I had someone who told me, he said, don't you know presidents aren't elected, they're selected. And I remember looking at him and saying, just because it rhymes doesn't mean it's right. If your vote wasn't worth anything, which a lot of people will try to tell you, if your vote wasn't worth anything, then there wouldn't be folks working so hard to prevent people from voting. Everyone in this audience has seen a heist movie. That's a movie that's all about people coming together. Ocean's 11 is a heist movie. Ocean's 12 is a heist movie. Ocean's 12 is a bad heist movie. Ocean's 13 is a heist movie. Ocean's 8 shouldn't have been made because by that point, come on, we had seen 3 of them. But Ocean's 8 is a heist movie. In none of those movies do all of those mastermind criminals come together to steal something that's worthless. The mere fact that there is so much election suppression, there are so many conspiracy theories, that there are so many people trying to prevent folks from voting, should let you know that it's worth something, and that's something that you can tell the folks. If it weren't real, they wouldn't be trying so hard to stop you from doing it. All right, so here's what we want to do about this. Don't amplify it. Don't share it. Don't retweet it. Don't repost it, because even if you do it in thinking, well, I'm just doing this to show people that it's not real. The problem is, we've gotten to the point, there are folks in this country who have the attention span of a goldfish. There are a lot of people who said, well, I read a story. You didn't read a story, you read a headline. And in some cases, you didn't even correctly read the headline. So when you repost it, when you send it out, you're actually spreading it more. All right. Always verify it when there's a source that says it. If there's some AI stuff. There was this thing with one of the presidential candidates. I won't say which one, but the presidential candidate was surrounded by Black people. And there were folks saying, see, this candidate really is good with Black people. And then when you looked at it, they were wearing hats where the words, there was just gibberish on it. And some people had like 6 or 7 fingers and some had extra arms. And it's like, and why? Because this photo isn't real, it's AI. All right, so make sure it's from a credible source. And when you see misinformation, report it to us. You can go to naacp.org/vote. You can report it to your state conference, report it to your leaders of your election integrity there. And you can also report information like that on using the QR code that I gave you earlier. And which you're all going to use on election day, and you're all going to use at the polls, only if you see something wrong. All right, ballot curing, ballot canvassing, election certification. We talked about what ballot curing is. That's if you've had a problem with your ballot and it has to be fixed, and that's going to be typically for a mail-in ballot. They will send you some type of notification, and then you have to literally got to do what you got to do to deal with that. Ballot canvassing, that's going to be where that takes place after the election, all the votes, to verify what the counts are, and then election certification. You don't actually do election certification, that's done by your state. And there are dates which I showed you on your state schedule earlier on, as far as the exact dates when that stuff has to be done. All right, post-election ballot curing, we talked about this. We talked about provisional ballots. If you had to vote provisionally, and it may have been because you did not have ID, Arizona's got a lot of restrictions, or a lot of, not restrictions, but a lot of things that you have to do for your ID. But it's also got a lot of different things that you can use as ID, including if you've got a valid driver's license, if you've got a valid Arizona ID, if you've got a tribal identification card. They'll also take some military ID. They'll take some government identification with photos. There's actually a number of different types of IDs that they're willing to take. So if you do have an issue with that ID, or you can probably do it and probably have the right ID in time for the election. If you showed up at the polling place and you have no ID at all, they will still let you vote, but they'll make you cast a provisional ballot. And it is just that, it is provisional, which means that you have to do something else. And you have to do something else in order to have your ballot counted. And whatever they tell you to do to have your ballot counted because you didn't have your ID, do it. Because again, otherwise your vote will not be counted. Your ballot will not be counted. Election night, this is the important thing to remember. Election night is not those aren't the results. They're estimating, they're guessing, they're looking at trends. One of the things that happened in 2020 was that some states actually said, we are not going to count any of the mail-in ballots until after we count the ballots that were voted on election day. And then what you saw happen was that, I can say this because this is a fact, this isn't partisan. You had the candidate who lost, a certain orange candidate who said, we were leading by so much by the way, I do a terrible Trump impression, but you're going to be stuck with it. We were leading by so much on that day. There's no way we could have lost. It's mathematically impossible for us to have lost because of the lead that we had. Here's the problem with that. there was never a lead because they didn't count the votes that had been submitted earlier. All the votes that had been submitted earlier, that had been submitted by mail, were just sitting there. So there was never a lead. You were just counting the folks who happened to vote that day. Here's something else I want to tell you about this, and this is not dealing strictly with election night. Polling. Here's the problem with polling. And your president says she calls me Unc because I'm old enough to be her uncle. No, I'm old enough to be her daddy. I've got a kid her age. All right. But I worked for a polling place when I was in college in the 1980s. And for those of you old enough to remember polls, the way they did polling, or who have ever dealt with a phone poll, is they called you on your landline. Young people don't use landlines. I have a landline in this house that I'm not answering the phone if I don't know who's calling me. And I have that landline mainly, and the only time I answer it, the person who's calling me is a relative who's at least in their 70s. But I'm not going to just answer the phone for some random call. And by the way, when you get a telephone call on your cell phone that says unknown caller, do you answer that? So polls aren't very good, and the polling isn't great because in a lot of cases, the polling is people who have landlines, older people, who are going to answer their phones, and people who just answer their phone and are willing to take a poll. Because I'll tell you right now, I have no desire to take a phone poll. If I'm taking a phone poll, it's because I didn't have anything else to do that day or at that moment. So don't worry about the polls, and you can't trust the polls either, because somebody tell me, and you can tell me in the chat, according to the polls, who was the undecided person who was going to win in 2016? And extra credit if you remember how many L's go in her first name. All right. But the polls said one thing and something else happened. And the polls as they were 3 weeks ago, and all right, so Nanette just cheated. She didn't even try to spell Hillary. She just said Clinton. All right, so the poll, but yes, you're right. But the poll said one thing 4 months ago. Polls say something else today. Also, do you know how you exit on the night of? Here's the other problem with exit polls. People lie in exit polls. Some people just don't respond at all to exit polls. Exit polls are when they ask people coming out, who did you vote for? By the way, I also have to tell you this, who you voted for is a legal secret. You do not have to tell anyone. If someone asks you, who did you vote for? You can say, first of all, it should be for whom did you vote? Because we don't want to end this question with the preposition. But the other thing is, it's none of their business. Yes, you can tell your friends, you can tell your family if you want to, but you don't have to tell anybody. All right. So election night, that is not the end of it. In some cases, particularly if it's close, if it's a blowout, yes, in some places, because there are some places where there's going to be a difference of like 15% that night. The chances of that person coming back, and that's when they start making a call, is when they say, look, if this trend continues, we're going to call this election for, or call this state for this person. Oh yes, here's the other thing, and Mark, you are absolutely correct. Some women, when they are asked, who are you going to vote for? And their husband is in the room, say the person that their husband is going to vote for, and don't say, there's no way in hell I'm voting for that person. And then when they get into a polling place, they do what their conscience tells them to do, rather than what they've told their husband they're going to do, or what their husband has told them what to do. All right. And that is one of the great things about our votes being secret, is that when we get into our polling place and when there is no one supposed to be in there with you, unless you brought them, and that person can only be, in every state, by the way, either a helper because you have some type of disability that requires that you bring someone with you, or it can be, did someone correct my English? Or it can be, in many cases, you can bring your child. Some people bring their children in because they want their children who are old enough to understand this is part of our social contract. This is part of what we do in our country to make sure that we can determine who governs us. It's something that we fought for, and it's something that we must do. All right, now you have to check with your local polling place to see what they do on that, but most places, and check with your state, but most places allow you to bring a small child in. That's a small child. No, you can't bring a 20-year-old into the polling place with you or into the booth with you to vote. All right, by the way, they're not even booths anymore. We use that term because they used to be booths. Now they're tend to be like little sectional partitions set up. All right, post-election audit, they're going to check all the equipment. And remember the sham last time in 2020 was the machines are switching votes, which of course they weren't. And as a matter of fact, I'll put it this way, if the machines were actually switching votes, then Fox News would be $387.5 million richer rather than the amount that they had to pay out in the defamation lawsuit settlement. All right. And finally, there is a certification at the end of all of this. Voting statistics, state resources. We have all of this stuff on our website. Go to www.vote.org and you can get the information. They'll have that information. There is a NAACP Project 2025 toolkit, which is available at rnaacp.org/resources. I think those are backslash, maybe they're slashes. Nobody's going to remember all this. Just Google NAACP Project 2025 toolkit and you'll get there. I don't expect you to remember that at the bottom. But yes, Project 2025 is a 900-page plan, which, by the way, I haven't read 900 pages of this, all right? But somebody wrote 900 pages about what they're going to do and if Trump is elected for a second term. And a lot of that stuff involves basically dragging us back to a time when most of us cannot remember. And I will tell you right now, we ain't going back. That's what and I know I said ain't. I know I did it for emphasis. All right. It is literally designed it says to gut the administrative state from within. Yes, to take away a lot of the protections, to take away the Department of Education. Here's the thing, when somebody tells you there's too much federal government, we need to get rid of some of these departments. I don't want to eat meat that's not USDA inspected. I don't want to drive across a bridge that has not been inspected by the Department of Transportation. All right, there are a number of things that the federal government does, and when you strip those things away, things get bad, and things get bad for folks who look like us. And things get bad for folks who don't have money, and things get bad for folks who have disabilities. So when somebody tells you that, oh, we need to get rid of that person better hope that they are rich enough and white enough and male enough and straight enough and Christian enough that getting rid of all those protections work for them. All right, call to action. Register for upcoming trainings. We're running out of training, so if you're going to do that, you got to do it quickly. NAACP.org, that's at events. NAACP.org, vote to report voting incidents, as well as using the QR code that I gave you. Volunteer with NAACP, and that's NAACP.org/ volunteer. Yes, we want as many volunteers as we can. As I said, if you can be a poll worker, please be a poll worker. They need folks who are honest. They need folks who are there to help and to make sure that democracy works the way it should. Sterling, Tyler Sterling is your contact for Arizona. At least I think he is, because I put his name in there. So we're going to go with that. And even if he's not, I'll tell him he is tomorrow. And that is tsterling@nacpnet.org. I think I may be done with this. Is there one more? Call to action. We did this. Attorneys and professionals. Yes, if you are an attorney, we need more attorneys. We're dealing with that. They can help out. You can reach out. If you give your information to your state conference president, she will get it to me, and we will try to work you in as far as doing some volunteer work, trying to help us on election day. Poll monitors, to the extent that people can go out and be around at polls to help people vote. This is a voluntary position, and if they're allowed in your state. And poll workers, as I said, every state has poll workers. And so if you have the time on election day where you can do that, this is, as I said, it's particularly good for retired individuals. It's something to do that day that really helps, and it does put a couple of shekels in your pocket. All right, time for Q&A. So this is a time when you can unmute yourselves, or who's ever in charge can unmute everyone. And I'll take any questions if you want to do them, if you want to do it orally, and that is the correct word. It is not verbally, because verbally also includes in writing. Julie, I saw you came off mute and then you went back on mute. So I don't know if you have a question or not. And I'm going to stop sharing this and we can go back to a full gallery position. Are there any questions from anyone?
Excuse me, I don't have a
For
question.
the life out of you. Hi, Edna. How are you? Or
Yes,
Edna's
hi.
iPad.
This is Yuma, NAACP 1016. I just want to share that my husband and I voted the other day. We did a mail-in ballot, and he made a mistake, and we read all the rules. So we went to the recorder's office to get another one. We decided to just do it there. He made another mistake. And the young lady said to him, well, she went to the counter. They were young. The poll watchers were young. And she came back and she said to my husband, you don't have to worry about that mistake. Just, it won't be counted. They just won't count that one. So you just go ahead and complete the ballot. But his response was, no, I would like another ballot, please, because we read the rules. And I just wanted to share that information.
All right. Well, good. Well, I'm glad you stood your ground. I'm glad you got done what you needed to get done. By the way, I have to also tell you about ballot curing. Here's the difference, because someone said to me, we were talking about this yesterday, and someone said, oh, they voted the wrong way on something, and they wanted to go back and change it to, because they read something about the issue, they wanted to go back and change their vote. That's not ballot curing. That's just changing your vote, and you can't do that. So that's why you have to know before you vote what the issues are, particularly if there are referendums or ballot initiatives. Know that before you vote. Once you cast your ballot, if you check or fill in an oval or whatever for one party, for one issue or the other, said no, you can get up to 2 more ballots if you made a mistake. Okay, is that after you submit? You can change your vote.
No, it was never submitted.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Submitted.
No, I'm saying after you submit your ballot. That's it.
Okay.
So if you get home and think, man, did I vote for X? I wanted to vote for Y. Yeah, that's done. So that's why we want you to be very careful. And we also want you to check your ballot over completely before you turn it in. Look at it again and make sure it's absolutely right. Okay.
And bring slate card into the polling place with you.
Right. And I think that in a lot of cases, they give you how many in places where they give you a sample ballot. Part of that is so that when you go in there and you're using the actual real ballot, you just mark the same thing that you have.
Thank you so much. This is Nanette from Goodyear, Arizona. I was on the show for PBS with the Secretary of State, And we have so many poll workers that they have an excess.
Oh, good.
And then also the other, Bill Gates was there. And I just got my text back showing that it counted. But we wanted clarification. When you get it in before, are you counting the ballot or if you're storing it? And they just stated that it's been counted. So I didn't know Arizona had converted over.
Yeah, I mean, I received my text yesterday telling me that my ballot had been, I received a text the day before saying that it had been received, and then the next day I received a text saying that it had been counted.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate it.
Great.
Nanette,
Okay.
to clarify, Ms. Nanette, what happens is for folks who do early voting by mail, they do count those as they come in. That way on election day, really all they're counting on election day are folks who voted in person. And anybody who does like last minute voting, things like that.
But when he spoke last night, the Secretary of State stated that we don't start counting those until 8. And so that got a confusion about it. I just wanted to,
You mean
you know,
8 o'clock PM?
AM.
AM, okay.
Yes, but he said that they don't count our ones that's mailed in until that day of election, but it just confirmed that it's already been counted.
All right. And oh, by the way, your canvassing, that's the point when they're doing the process of authenticating everything. That's actually required under Arizona law to be public. And so if you want to go and observe, you certainly can. You can observe and report back to us to let us know if there's anything of interest. I will say this. Last go round, we only had issues because we saw what the trend was going on election night. Now, when I say last go round, I mean in 2020, where there was claims of, fraud, and the folks who were angry couldn't figure out exactly what they wanted the election boards to do. In one part of the country, they're standing outside chanting, count every vote, count every vote. It's like, yeah, that's kind of what they do, because that's what they're doing. And in other places, they were saying, stop the count, stop the count. All right. All of that is mass hysteria. All right. All of that is going to be a lot of noise, but unfortunately, we can expect it. And the truth is that we have been fighting lawsuits, and the Office of General Counsel and many state conferences have been involved in multiple lawsuits already. I think we're at like 14 or 15, where we were either filed motions to intervene, or we brought the lawsuit, or we filed an amicus brief, which is a friend of the court brief, because there are folks out there right now trying to undermine, and have been trying to undermine, confidence in our democracy for more than 5 years. Non-citizens aren't voting. There is not massive voter fraud. And there's just not. And when you even hear about someone double voting, this idea of thousands upon thousands of dead people voting, that's not true. If you notice, one of the reasons we have a lawsuit right now where we're representing 10 members of the House of Representatives who were trapped in the Capitol during on January 6th. There was a lot of confusion. We're praying that we don't go through anything like that again. But we do know that there are forces out there who, if their choice is living in a democracy or winning, they would rather just win. And that's why it's important that each and every one of you not only vote, and I know everybody on this call is voting. I know I'm preaching to the choir. It's important that you also make sure that your neighbors, your friends, your relatives, that they also vote. it's important that you know the facts so that you can dispel the false statements that they're hearing, because there are a lot of lies that are being spewed in this election campaign. Some are completely detached from reality. And it's important that when someone brings that to you, that you can tell them the truth. All right. But also keep in mind that there are some people who have made up their minds. They are not going to vote no matter what. If there's someone who's not sure whether they're going to vote or not, you can talk them into it. You can convince them. If there's someone who's made up their mind, no matter what, they're not going to vote, chances are you're not going to be able to talk them into it. I said this when I was at the Virginia conference, and I'll say it here too. This election, in a large part, is going to be decided by a lot of young voters. So it's important to meet those voters where they are. They don't have the same life experience that you do. They haven't seen the world the same way that you do. And you're not going to be able, there are things they're going to say, some of them, that you're going to say, how could you even say that? When they say, it doesn't matter whether you vote. All right. You cannot scold them into voting, because they are adults, and you can't scold adults. All right. But you can talk with them, and you can try to reason. And because I don't want to take up any more of your time, I will say this, and I'll turn it over to your president. On behalf of National, on behalf of myself, I thank each and every one of you for everything you do. We are not a top-down organization. We work from the bottom up. We work from the members to the units, to the branches, to the state conferences, to the regions, to the board, to everyone. This organization works because of the things that you do day in and day out. I will leave you with this. I stole it from Sammy Davis Jr., the greatest entertainer of my lifetime, and probably before some of you were born. I know, I can see you, President Tyree, looking at me. Without you, there is no us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving us your time. I know you're probably on the East Coast, so it's a little bit later for you. So thank you for giving us time tonight to kind of go over election protection. As you said earlier, Arizona is a hotbed for crazy. Fortunately, unfortunately, more unfortunately. So really what I want to say to all of you is please be safe. Election day, post-election day, and probably everything into inauguration. Just be mindful of your surroundings. Be mindful of the conversations that you're having and with whom you're having them, because, we are an open carry and a no license state. And there are folks all over Arizona who believe that a certain candidate is their savior and will do anything for that person. So please, please, please just be safe, have a plan, talk with your family members about staying in if they can. And I think that's really all I have. Does anybody have anything that they would like to share with the group before we adjourn tonight? Okay. Hearing none, may I get a motion to adjourn, please? Thank you, Ms. Amelia. May I get a second?
I make
Actually, I
that
was
second.
trying to address one issue.
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Amelia. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, everybody had received a copy of the Tucson branch's report and recommendations on restoration of voting rights. Get support for that. I know it's not going to be in time for this election, but shortly after the election, we have someone who's agreed to be a legislative sponsor for a bill that would restore voting rights to people who have felony convictions without them having to do anything, and would require that they be provided with a voter registration form upon release from parole or prison. So Just was hoping to get the state conference approval so that that wouldn't just be a Tucson branch report and recommendations, that it could be a state conference report and recommendation. So I'm moving, make a motion that the state conference approve that report and recommendations.
Has everybody had an opportunity to read that report? It was in the newsletter that went out earlier this week.
Madam President, this is VP Miller. I've read it, but I also think that because of the relationship that we have with Representative Cruz, we probably should sit down with her and have a conversation about it. Because I think the initial person who is supposed to be sponsoring it is non-African American, I believe. I'm not certain, but I think we should speak to Rep. Cruz.
I believe Vice President Miller that she sent an email this morning asking for some time of ours, so we'll follow up with her.
Perfect.
Miss Amelia, may we table this until we can speak with Representative Cruz, and then we can bring it back for vote?
I think that the report and recommendation is just a report about the fact that there's a need for this kind of legislation, and a recommendation that there be the legislation. It doesn't have anything to do with who might carry it or what the legislation specifically would say.
Okay. In that case, I agree that we should have automatic restoration of voting rights. So I personally would like to accept your motion. And is there anybody who would like to second that? Ms.
Second.
Rhodes, I see that. Thank you. All those in favor of accepting the motion that we, as the NAACP, want to see a restoration of rights for our formerly incarcerated, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Thank you, everybody. Any opposition? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you, VP Miller. Motion has passed. Anything else for the body? All right, second time to go. May I get a motion to adjourn, please?
I make that motion.
Thank you, Dr. J. Cox. May I get a
I
second?
second.
Thank you, Ms. Fallon. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining. Mr. Anthony, my newfound thank you so much for joining us. I know that we're going to be in communication more frequently, so I appreciate you, and I hope all of you have an amazing night.